Hey guys, Introspection here, and today I want to talk to you about muscles and testosterone and being a man! Okay, well, not quite like that, but I did want to discuss it with you. See, I think at this point, the majority of people know that Andrew Tate has been kicked off of a lot of social medias, which, don't get me wrong, that in itself is a discussion to be had about freedom of speech, but that's not what I want to discuss today. What I want to discuss is that I don't think that a lot of the stuff that Andrew Tate preached was great, and I think it's pretty obvious that similar influencers are going to continue to preach similar things. Now, I've also noticed that a lot of the YouTubers on YouTube will refer to these people as like the alpha male influencers, for lack of a better word, and they just outright really don't like them. And don't get me wrong, I don't particularly like these YouTubers either. I particularly Andrew Tate, I'm not gonna lie, kind of drove me a little bonkers, but they just genuinely don't like this entire group of influencers, and I think for good reason, but at the same time, they try to discredit everything they say, which I don't think is right, because a lot of the stuff they say is genuinely good advice. Things like continue to be chivalrous, or continue to work on yourself as a person. That is all great advice. If I haven't given similar advice before in my videos, there's a good chance it's going to come up sometime in the future. Now, with that said, again, I don't think a lot of the advice they give is great either. And in this video, I am hoping to go over a lot of those pieces of advice. I'm hoping to at least get to some of the people who watch these kind of influencers. Now, granted, I don't think that's going to happen. I think if I'm really lucky, I'll get to like one of them. But that's going to be about it. And I don't even think I'm going to get that. But on the off chance I do get that one person, all I'm asking is that you watch through the video. I'm not asking you to automatically believe everything I say. That would be ridiculous. But just to give my video some genuine thought. So the first point I want to go over is that they have this very strong premise of you have to go against the government. You have to go against society. I love this one. You have to take the red pill, and you will be awakened. Now, before I say anything else, I probably need to clarify. No, I'm not telling you to immediately just follow with whatever society says. No, I'm not telling you to immediately just abide by whatever your government says. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am going to say is that if you are going against the government, society, whatever ideologies, simply for the sake of going against them, all you're doing is going from a sheep of the government, society, whatever, to the sheep of whoever is telling you to do the exact opposite. If you're doing all of the opposite just for the sake of doing the opposite thing, then you're still just doing it for the sake of somebody else telling you to do the opposite thing. Now, again, I'm going to reiterate, no, I'm not telling you to just follow the government, society, whatever. But what I am going to tell you is look at the individual things and figure out whether it makes sense or not. To give you a very nerdy reference, I know. Take Halo, for instance. I really do not like Halo. I think it's not a great game, at least the first one. I'm referring to specifically the first Halo, just to be clear. I don't think it's a good game, and I could go on and on about what I think is flawed about it. But the reason I dislike Halo isn't because everybody likes Halo. It's because I have played it, and I have reasons to dictate me thinking it's a bad game. On the other hand, I really like the first wave of the Marvel movies. Not all of them, but the majority of them. And that's the thing that a lot of people seem to agree on in general society. Now, no, I do not like the Marvel movies simply because all of society likes it, or the majority of society likes it. I like them because I've watched them, and I have a series of reasons as to why I enjoy them. Or frankly, I just enjoy them. I think they're good movies. Now, granted, that does not make these things I say objective truths or false, but the point I'm trying to get to is that you're not doing much for yourself if you're just doing the opposite for the sake of doing the opposite. If you want to stand as your own person, then you have to look at the individual things we're discussing, and you need to say, I will do this or not do this simply on account of the fact that it makes sense or no sense. And I know these are very nerdy references, but they apply to just about anything. The bottom line is that it comes down to whether or not you find legitimate reason this topic is good or not good, or whether you're for it or against it. Not based on the simple fact society or the government tells you to do it or not to do it. Because if you just do the opposite for the sake of doing the opposite, then you're just part of the sheeple group that tells you to do everything the opposite. You need to make your decisions regardless of what they tell you, and more on the fact of what logic you found. Now, no, that does not mean that everything I say dictates truth, or everything that you're going to say using this method dictates truth, but at least this way, you're making your own individual decisions. Furthermore, you can continue to improve on yourself on that fact as you learn more and go through life. So that's the first thing. Now, the second point is that this group of people seems to have a very generalized, for lack of a better term, view on women. And I'm not terribly sure, to be honest with you, where to start with this point, but I guess I should probably start here. Weirdly enough, at least from what I've seen, this group of influencers seems to have a good amount of variation when it comes to this topic. Like, they all seem to hover in more or less the same area, but to what degree seems to change rather significantly. What I will say is that they all still seem to have a very generalized point they're trying to push to their audience. So what I want to say that is statistics are really great. There are most definitely things that men and women are more prone to do, habits they may have, things they may be, stuff like that. That's 100% true. But what you also need to appreciate is that when it comes to an individual, that means next to nothing. Like, honestly, granted, it's true that a boy or a girl will be more likely to have this habit, or whatever the case may be, but take, for instance, say you just took half of the things that statistically says that boys or girls are more likely to experience or have or whatever. You would be hard-pressed to find somebody that even abides by half of the things that statistically they should be. You need to appreciate that humans are super radically different, like to an insane amount. Like, I don't think there is a person on this earth that exists that encompasses all of the things that they're statistically likely to be. There's just not a person, or if there is, nobody's heard of them. It's it's statistically unlikely to have anybody follow even a large portion of the things that they're statistically likely to do. Again, that doesn't mean that women or men aren't predisposed to do stuff, but you also need to appreciate that we are also individuals. You can't just look at us as a number and say, yeah, all women are like this, most women are like this, men are like this, whatever the case may be. We're not going to get anywhere, and you're not going to get to know people like that. The second thing is that it's probably worth noting that not all of them, a lot of them do bring statistics, but a very, very large portion, I hesitate to say this, but I'd be willing to wager maybe even the majority of these influencers don't actually use any statistics. At least I haven't seen, for instance, okay, that's not true. I've seen Andrew Tate make some references to statistics, but a lot of the stuff he says, at least from what I've seen, he's never referred to any studies. He's never gone to any statistics. He kind of just makes super general assumptions. That seems to be what a lot of these people are doing. And don't get me wrong, I do think that there's a place for anecdotal evidence. I know that a lot of people who are very fact-led and want to make sure that we get to the truth for good reason don't really like anecdotal evidence. And don't get me wrong, you certainly shouldn't just blindly believe it, but at the same time, it does put a lot of things into perspective, so I do think that anecdotal evidence does have a place in these kinds of discussions for sure. But with that said, people that are of this niche seem to like really make super out there generalizations that just, I have a lot of questions to how they arrived at these generalizations, and I've not seen a whole lot of explanation, or when I have, it doesn't really add up 100%. So at least when people are making those super generalizations without any actual numbers to back them up, please at least be super wary of that. because I've seen a lot of stuff said that it's a little crazy, and I haven't seen anybody back them up. Like, one great example I see quite often is women are incapable of leadership, they're too sporadic, this, that, whatever the case may be. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that being a woman inherently makes you better or worse at doing leadership positions, but I also have yet to see anything suggesting that, like, it's incapable for women to be leaders. Now, I also don't think the premise of the world would be 100% better if it was 100% run by women. I think so long as humanity is running anything, no matter what gender, we're probably going to have some major serious problems. But at the same time, granted, you might be able to make the argument that there are things that women are statistically predisposed to be like or do that might prove disadvantageous for leadership. But going back to the thing that I said before, you need to evaluate people on an individual level because the likelihood that everybody follows all of these things is super, super low. And B, there are also statistical things that men are prone to do that also prove disadvantageous for leadership. But again, these reasons aren't reason to make men or women be or not be leaders, because the fact of the matter is they're all individuals who have super unique traits that may or may not prove to be advantageous or disadvantageous in leadership. I have worked with both male and female leaders, and frankly, I honestly have had very little difference in how much I liked being under either one of them. So, granted, that is anecdotal evidence, but at this point, I'm just using anecdotal evidence to disprove anecdotal evidence along with philosophical statistical arguments. So do keep that in mind when they make these super big generalizations, because I think that a lot of them not just harmful for people to think of women, but is also super harmful to embody yourself. Like, for instance, if you are somebody who really wants to find a woman who genuinely really cares about you, and you fall into the belief that all women are incapable of making decisions of emotional value and only care about you for whatever physical things that you bring, you'd probably be very, very depressed. Like, that is a super depressing thought, for me at least. And frankly, if I genuinely believe that, I'd probably curl up in a ball and cry right now. And again, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of women like that, for sure. But to encompass all women like that's gotta be miserable to believe. Especially if your goal is to find somebody who genuinely cares for you the same way you would genuinely care for them. Like, that can't be fun to and not to say, don't get me wrong, I'm also not saying that you should just not believe anything that makes you unhappy. That's also very dumb. We will fall as a society that if we do that. But what I am saying is that I think that this principle in itself, for my own logical reasons, which I've already displayed to you in this video, are false, and these false reasonings for anybody to believe can be very harmful to not only others, but also themselves. That's what I'm saying in this case. So, do be careful when the topic of generalizing women comes up, because, again, it can be super, super harmful for a lot of people involved. Now, the third point is that a lot of them have very strong ideologies on what a man should be. And this is another one that varies quite significantly amongst the influencers. And honestly, some of them I really agree with. Like, for instance, someone will say a man should be able to stand up for himself, a man should be able to take care of his family, a man should love his family, a man should be respectful, a man should be courteous. All of these things make complete sense and I totally agree with. On the other hand, there are plenty of other influencers that will suggest super, super crazy stuff. Like, I don't know, a man should be super shallow, I suppose. And I bring this up because ultimately, as much as I'd like to give you a definitive wording as to what a man should be, that's kind of hard, especially to put into words. I mean, I can come up with a lot of factors that I think make me a man, but they're not exclusive to that kind of thing, if that makes any sense. So it's very hard for me to definitively give you a set list of rules to tell you this is what you need to do to become a man. I certainly think, like I said, a lot of the previous things I mentioned, being chivalrous, kind, respectful, loving, are definitely going to be a huge part of it. But to say that it's the totality, it's a little hard for me to say with complete confidence, yeah, that's what it is. So my best piece of advice when it comes to that, honestly, if you work on yourself and you show respect to yourself and others, I think you'll at least be on your way to figuring out what a man is for yourself. Now, the last point I wanted to make in this video is that I think it's pretty obvious that these influencers are aimed at a group of men, or honestly also kids, who feel like because they're men, they are dealing with a lot of problems that are born of current society, which makes total sense. I know I've certainly dealt with that problem, and I think that just about any society in any given time period will always give everybody at least a couple problems to deal with. And in just about every other situation, they have a tendency to band together with people with similar problems to help them through those problems, and that's what's happening here, which makes a lot of sense. That's how we deal with stuff, in addition to listening to each other to try to fix and continue to improve society. With that said, though, that also comes with the risk that those group of people can also become very toxic. This is, of course, not unique to this group of people. Any kind of person or any kind of group of people who band together to help each other through their problems also has the potential to become very toxic against everybody who isn't also dealing with them. So what we need to keep in mind is that we need to help each other with our problems, and we need to work on fixing whatever problems we find in current society, whether or not they're related to men. But with that said, we also don't want to become toxic about it. We want to maintain our morality and respect for each other, otherwise we're definitely not going to figure anything out. Well, guys, that's going to be it for this video. What's that, Uku? Oh, okay. So, I guess you heard it here first, folks. Andrew Tate, apparently Retsu and Hanayama are still recovering from her last fight, so if you want to give her a warm-up fight, give her a call. Well, guys, again, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have anything else to tell me, if you just want to tell me how great I am, certainly don't mind that. Make sure to leave it in the comments below. Otherwise, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that bell button. I post every other week. Until next time, hear nothing and listen to all. Bye, guys.